I said no, hey, yeah.
Well, hello everyone. We're back again. Matt Gresick and myself. I'm Eric Ebersole, State Delegate, and more importantly, your host on Brick and Mortar, Education from the Inside Out.
What? Hi, I'm Matt Gresick. Excited to interview. A little bit untraditional today, but excited nonetheless because it brings a different area of expertise into our podcast.
We always like to get teachers, and you're going to think, wait, how is this guy a teacher? Stand by. We will justify ourselves yet. So tonight, I have someone who I have an appropriately intimate relationship with. This is Delegate Nick Allen, who is my roommate, or more appropriately, my office mate in the Maryland House of Delegates, who gives me lots of good advice on things, but also continues to impress me. So welcome, Nick. How you doing this evening?
I'm good. I'm good. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you leading off with a little bit of flattery. That's always a good way to start with your guests. But no, I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so the focus of this contest, we're going to call this Education in Armed Conflict, which is in no way going to be a reflection of teachers battling students in the classroom. In fact, what we're going to do here, I'm sorry about that, Matt. What we're going to do here is we're going to, first of all, just have him tell us who he is. Tell us about your military service. And while you're at it, tell us how it informed you as a delegate a little bit.
Gladly. Yeah. So my name is Nick Allen. I'm a delegate representing District 8, Northeast Baltimore County. That's the Parkville, Kearney, Rosedale, White Marsh, Towson area. And like Eric said, we are office mates in the Baltimore County office, and always glad to work together. Um, but I'm also an Army veteran. My wife and I both actually are Army veterans. We're both West Point graduates. We met at the academy. Um, and, after graduating the academy in 2011, I served a little over 5 years in the active Army as an officer. Um, and, you know, that was kind of the start of my public service in a lot of ways. And it's definitely informed my attitude around uh, how I approach my job as a delegate, kind of what my priorities are, and it's really where I learned a lot about um, leading and listening and kind of figuring out the job as you go. Because I think Eric, that no one necessarily tells you how to be a delegate. You just kind of figure it out as you go along.
And you're good at it. That's the thing. No one told you how, but you figured it
There
out.
you are. There you are with the flattery again.
What's due is due as it goes. So I have to laugh because my previous roommate, Pat Young, was a veteran Marine, and so I'm a little conflicted here. I got different
You are. It's all right.
branches of the armed service in my office, and where does my loyalty lie, etc. But
I will say the Army has a lot more affection for the Marines. We feel like we have a lot more in common with the Marines than we do with our Navy or even Air Force brethren.
how
So
about Space Force? How do you feel about them?
Yeah.
I, they were the Space Force didn't exist while I was in, so I genuinely do not know. I genuinely
Good.
don't know what that experience is like.
The
And see,
space men and women.
the spaceman.
Yes, the Guardians is how the
Oh, they were
Guardians is the
Guardians. Oh,
proper term.
wow.
They
I didn't know
they
that.
had they had like a poll.
We used
Oh,
to have
That's
a
wow.
that
thing
was the winning.
where my previous roommate would make me hum all of the appropriate armed services songs. But I don't know the one for Space Force, I must tell you. So I haven't
They have
learned.
their own, they have their own song though. Semper
They do.
Supra. I forget
They
the
do
I don't know
indeed.
the words, but
All right. Well, getting back to our podcast at at the crux.
yes,
Um,
yes, the important thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about
Explain.
that? What about a podcast?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do that.
Explain to us how you became a teacher during your deployment, and just enlighten our listeners about how that manifested in a combat zone.
Yeah, so my first deployment, I deployed as a lieutenant. I had been out of the academy for less than a year, or a little over a year. We deployed to Afghanistan in August of 2012. It was a 9 month deployment. My unit and I, it was where we were fairly remote, fairly quiet though. And there's an old adage that war or deployments are extremely long periods of boredom punctuated by random emergencies. And that was very, very true for us. Um, and I will say, just kind of in general, I think the average person might not understand unless they've served how integral education and training in terms of education really are to the military experience. I think we all kind of think of education or training in the military with like drill instructors or drill sergeants, but that's just really the first kind of educator you come into contact with in the military when you go through basic training or boot camp. After that, we're training each other. You do yearly certifications, yearly training at the rifle range, yearly um, combat lifesaver training and first aid training, stuff like that. And a lot of times the unit kind of does that internally. You take turns training each other. As a leader, as an officer, that's really an important part of your job description is to not only do the training, but to lead the training, to plan the training. And when you're not, when you're on the state side, when you're not deployed, that's a really, really important part of your daily routine and your kind of annual schedule as a soldier and as a service member is what training are you going to get done this year? What training are you going to get done this quarter or this month? So that's a really big part of it. But while we were deployed during some of those long periods of boredom, um, I remember talking with my first sergeant who was an awesome guy, still is an awesome guy. I still keep in touch with him, and he had deployed multiple times since the first Gulf War, even, and he had seen a lot, and he had seen again the kind of the boredom that can overtake some units and the complacency that comes along with that. So he was kind of like me thinking about ways that we can keep our soldiers engaged, keep people from getting complacent, and also give people an opportunity to kind of better themselves. So on that deployment, at his suggestion, I reached out to there's a number of online universities or universities that have online programs specifically for service members, and they use the GI Bill and continuing education and tuition assistance programs and stuff like that to to educate soldiers while they're still in. So I reached out to one of these colleges. I got hired essentially as a
Oh, wow.
adjunct faculty member. Yeah, I was, it was funny. I was exchanging emails back and forth with people with a lot of letters after their names. So I started writing, Nick Allen, comma BS after my name, so I had, my academic credentials, my whole bachelor of science degree.
Yeah.
But so that was kind of the original idea was, hey, what can we do to keep the soldiers engaged? And again, like, we have 9 months here. Let's make it worth it. Let's make it worth it for them and for their careers. Because again, a part of the military that I don't know if people really understand, in addition to the training, as an officer, as a non-commissioned officer and a leader, you're very much expected to not just manage your soldiers, but also kind of mentor them and manage their careers. And you look at, promotion points, making sure they go to promotion boards, they get interviewed, um, they take continuing education courses, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And you could really help them, in their career moving forward. You help them get promotions, you help them get other jobs in the military, and that's a really important part of that leadership role as well. So I taught two courses to them while I was in Afghanistan. The first one was an ASVAB improvement course.
Yeah.
Eric, I think you remember. I said something to you the other day. I think you remember what
ASVAB.
ASVABs. Yeah,
I
what does it stand
do.
for?
We,
Always
we give
forget.
the ASVAB test oftentimes to high school students to get them an idea of what they might be interested in. Let's get the V, vocation. Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery.
Yes. Yeah, so this was a course designed to help with the ASVAB improvement score. So a lot of people don't realize you can retake the ASVAB once you're in,
Mhm.
and you can reclass to a new military occupation specialty at MOS. So when you first go in, your MOS is largely determined by your ASVAB score.
Say what
Depending on
MOS is for me and for
MOS is your military occupational specialties. That's like your
thank you.
job.
Thank you.
For enlisted soldiers, it's very, very specific, like within within a certain branch, they'll have, mechanics, but even within mechanics, there's a wheeled vehicle mechanic, and there's a tracked vehicle mechanic, and a generator mechanic, all stuff like that.
I think
So
I'd be a lug nut tightening mechanic.
yeah,
That's
you'd
what I
be
would be.
very, again, it gets very, very specific. I wasn't an artillery officer, so it's very broad kind of skill set there. I was meant to be a jack of all trades and master of none, rather. But for the enlisted soldiers, it's a very, very specific type of training and specific type of job that they're assigned to. And that's all given based on your ASVAB score. Basically, if you get your score back and you have like a list of jobs for that score that you can choose. The higher ones tend to be kind of what you expect. If you score high on your ASVAB, you're looked at for IT, you're looked at to be a medic, stuff like that. And then some of the the more average scores are for some of the less technical jobs. So being able to teach this course was an opportunity for a lot of my soldiers to kind of restart their careers, or at least
So improve their
go down a
score
whole
so that they would qualify
right.
for more stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the most, the proudest moments I had was afterwards. I looked at every single person who took the test after the course got a better score.
Mhm.
Most of them improved, I think, by about 20%,
Oh,
if I
wow.
remember correctly. It was a pretty significant increase. The largest increase, one of our soldiers, she was a cook who, nothing against the cooks, but that's not a super high ASVAB score normally needed to qualify to be a cook. Um, but she scored high enough that she was able to reclass to be a medic, which
Oh,
is
wow.
a huge jump. So
So now you
that
know
was really,
something.
really cool.
You learn something quickly, that the sense of satisfaction and pride that comes from helping others to learn stuff and
Oh, it was
improve because of the work you've done. All teachers feel
absolutely,
that way, or most do anyway. Yeah. Great for you.
absolutely. It was incredible. Yeah. And that was the first course I taught, and it was fun, but it was challenging too, because I mean, as you know, the ASVAB covers a lot of different subjects. There's some parts that are just like it's like a logic or like an IQ course. Like you're looking for the next shape in a series of patterns or whatever. There's also a math section that takes, it goes through, I think, algebra or pre-algebra and algebra. There's a geometry section. There's a reading comprehension section. So it's a very diverse skill set. And I was a humble English major in college, so I was set for the
And
reading
I think all
comprehension part.
social studies and English majors should be humble. Okay, I'm just saying.
Yes, that's true. We are, we are. But it was really cool. It was a nice challenge to kind of refresh my memory on a lot of things, especially math. Um, and it was really cool to to work with the soldiers and get them kind of excited for the course itself. I think they ended up looking forward to it every week. It was a nice break in the routine, and excited about retaking the ASVAB eventually, which
Cool.
was cool to see as well.
Cool. That's great. I mean, you had to have a fair amount of expertise. What schools were cooperative with you on that? Like, who did you work with? I'm curious who.
I was hired by Central Texas College
Okay.
was the one we worked with. There were a few others that were interested, but I think it was simpler. I kind of just went with the one.
Yeah.
Um,
Still, it's great that
but
they were willing to work with you and consider hiring you from a distance.
absolutely,
Yeah, I mean that's an important thing. So yeah, it matters a lot to me.
especially
Um,
with the bachelor's.
yeah, absolutely. So you sort of got to it, but let's make sure. Did you have a funny or challenging or rewarding moment in your teaching that sticks out to you? Like, what memory sticks out? Something that happened while you were doing this.
Yeah, I have a few. But the first one that comes to mind is we had periodic practice tests throughout the course, and different sections and different subjects. And I made a deal with my soldiers that if they all scored above, I can't remember what it was, whatever arbitrary number we
Some
chose.
sort of
If they all,
benchmark. Yeah.
yeah, well, if they all scored above whatever this was on this English like practice test I had, I would let them pick the next like reading excerpt we did. Because I was picking like the jumping frog of was it Calabasas County or whatever from Mark Twain, and kind of old school typical English teacher stuff. But I told them I would let them pick what book they wanted to read an excerpt from, and we would cover that in the next class or whatever. Sure enough, they all did it. They all blew, whatever the score was out of the water. Um, and again, this is like 2012, 2013, mind you. So, what was one of the most popular books in America at the time? 50 Shades of Grey.
I was going to
So
guess that. I thought I was going to be funny and guess that. I swear to God, I was going to be.
I wish I were joking. But we read the first chapter of 50 Shades of Grey as a class. And practice, like reading comprehension with that.
Matt and I have both read. No, I have not.
It's not very well written.
Okay, well, that's good to know. But
As
there's
someone who
some good
enjoys
parts
literature,
in it, I understand, that are worth
well,
it.
there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
really, whatever you said, I was going to joke and say it wasn't 50 Shades of Gray, but you beat me
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's
No, it's perfect.
And then the
That's
other
great.
moment, again, obviously, the rewarding, the rewarding part was obviously seeing people improve scores and reclass and kind of, again, completely revamp their career in the Army. And a lot of them took those tests and improved their scores, are still in the Army. I've been out of the Army for 9 years now, and a lot of them are still in. So that's really, helped their careers. But there's another small anecdote that I enjoyed. My first sergeant, who again was this whole thing was his idea. And he was very much a mentor to me, and again, I still keep in touch with him. And I remember he told me while we were still deployed, he said, I'm really seeing you make your mark on these soldiers. I said, really? I said, that means a lot. I appreciate you saying that. How so, if you don't mind me asking? He goes, oh no, I saw one private correct the other one's grammar the other day, and I think that's your fault. I said, okay, yeah, that would be me.
Well done.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
I was very proud of that. Yes.
Well done. Those are two good stories. They're really quite exciting.
Oh,
Matt, I don't
oh,
know if you can hear that. Our ringer might be working, it might not, but I will tell you the red light's
faintest
flashing on
sound.
the board, and we have a call coming in. I
awesome.
love it when people are listening and they call in. Hello, caller. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
Well, thank you so much for taking an interest in our show. Can you tell us your name, please?
Of course, yeah. My name is Esther O. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, well, I think it's a pretty strong coincidence. I have an intern in my office with the name Esther O. I don't know. It doesn't sound like her to me, though. It must be. I don't know.
Esther is such a wonderful name.
It is, and this is a relatively common
That's
name.
so funny.
I'm guessing. Who'd have thunk? I like that. Esther, do you have we have Delegate Allen on. He's talking to us a little bit about some of his teaching and military experience. Do you have a question for him?
Yeah, I do. It's been interesting just hearing about his teaching experience, Delegate Allen's experience in the military, but I was just wondering, what does he kind of see his role in the legislature now in relation to education?
Okay, so there it is again. I mean, 100%, right, Matt?
Yep. Perfect.
Our callers just they get the exact flow of the show. They seem to know
by
the exact
God.
correct
Biblical.
next question to ask. They are
Right on the money.
Their IQs are off the charts. Esther, thanks for your question an awful lot. Delegate Allen, Nick, do you want to tell us about answer that for us?
Yeah. So, and when it comes to education, in general, I think our job in the General Assembly, and I think you agree with this, Eric, our job is to keep our promises that we've made to the students and educators of Maryland. When it
I
comes
totally
to
disagree. That's wrong. No.
that'll be a
I'm
curveball.
about to give up myself. Okay. So,
Yeah, well, you know, but beyond that, beyond the basic the funding role and the advocacy role that I think we all uh, believe in and work towards in Annapolis, I do think a lot about the promises we make to our service members and our veterans. When we talk about the VA, making sure the VA is not only fully funded but also functioning the way that should. Making sure that veterans, when they apply for their the benefits that they deserve, the benefits which they have earned through their service, make sure they're not being taken advantage of. There's a lot of rather seedy businesses that have cropped up in recent years, around this whole thing, kind of a cottage industry, really, around just making money off of veterans who are trying to get their benefits that they've earned. Um, that's kind of the unfortunate other side of the coin. For the first time, pretty much in American history, veterans are actually receiving benefits that are somewhat commensurate with what they've actually earned. I think we can still do better, but I think we're doing the best that we've pretty much ever done. But the other side of that coin, like I said, is there's a lot of people kind of circling that issue and kind of creating their own little market
Yeah.
that they can benefit from, fortunately. So my role here is very much to be an advocate for veterans, for military families as well. Make sure military families have access to education. Um, Military spouses, who I think tend to kind of get forgotten about sometimes in the
Yeah.
shuffle.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of education, but as far as employment goes. I think I was saying to you the other day, Eric, but every time we have a bill uh, in the General Assembly that we vote on that has something to do with the interstate compact, any sort of interstate compact dealing with professional licensure, or certifications or anything like that, that's a military bill.
Mhm.
That's the first thing I think of when I think of that, is like, oh, this is for military families. This is for
Well, that's
military
absolutely correct.
spouses.
I mean, we're on the cusp of approving the Interstate Teaching Certification Compact, and it was originally laid down to help transient military families, help people who were
Well,
related to people who were being moved around,
and
be able to pick up professions in their new locations, including teaching.
the number of veterans that I teach with a woman who actually helps out with English language learners right now, and
That's
ESOL.
cool.
And she's a former veteran, and one of the social studies teachers is a former veteran. And we've had veteran spouses, just like you said, who had to transfer to Hawaii, transfer to California. And it's, that's an interesting point that you make there, Nick. You want to get to our fun question?
Yeah, because he talked about the VA. We were thinking about asking a not more specific
Yeah.
question, but you actually
Yeah.
rolled that very
Hit on it.
nicely. So go ahead, Matt. Lay it
All
out.
right.
Lay it
So
on him.
fun question. This is the key to making sure that you
Just
pay
make sure whether you're a good guest or not. I just got to say, I
Exactly.
don't want to put
We
you under
judge
any
you.
pressure
We
here.
judge you
Apparently.
based off this question. So mascot wise, you're king for a day. All those
Yes.
schools that you've been at, obviously you're going to change the Knights to something else. Obviously to go against your. I know you're a very proud Army man. So what would you change, and what would you change it to, and why? Go ahead.
See, again, this is a controversial question potentially. This is a pot stirring question. I have two quick answers. I know I don't want to go too long, but
Yeah.
one's actually a school that, not the one I attend, but one in my district actually.
Yeah,
Um,
now you are in trouble. Let's go, man.
no, 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 no. I have backup here. Um, so in my district, we have Perry Hall Elementary, Perry Hall Middle, and Perry Hall High. Perry Hall Elementary and Perry Hall High are both the Gators. Perry Hall Middle, for some reason or another, are the Panthers. And I don't know why this happened. Apparently, according to Councilman David Marks, it was something they voted on back in the
Yeah.
day, and Panthers won. Apparently, uh, another candidate that they could have voted on was Unicorns, which I think would have been amazing had they gone with that. Definitely a missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think for the sake of Perry Hall unity, changing the Perry Hall Middle mascot to the Gators, I think would make some
Gator,
sense.
gator, gator.
Or even
Yeah,
crocodiles. Okay, if they
or
wanted to be more
something,
difficult.
or something. Yeah.
The
Well then,
crocs.
yeah, like Parkville High are the Knights, but Parkville Middle are the Squires, which I think makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. That's
Squires,
like
the Knights.
continuity. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I enjoy that. I enjoy that stuff.
Yeah.
I will also say, and this is where we are going to get controversial, and so I apologize in
Oh,
advance
here
for
we
all the
go.
angry letters. Um, if I had my druthers, I would take the Army mascot back to the cadets.
Wow.
Um, they were the cadets for a long, long time. The
Wow.
the Navy's the midshipmen. Army should be the
Yeah.
cadets. I don't dislike the Black Knights. I think it's a fine mascot, but I mean, over the last few years, they kind of rebranded and they have the new logo for the football team. It's not really a knight. It's based on
Yeah.
the West Point crest, so it's like a Greek helmet. Just be the cadets again. We don't have to be the Black Knights. We can be the cadets. So that's
I'm
so
not
that's
saying
my
this, but
When
it
Space
sounds
Force
like
has
you want to
their
be more
football
like
team,
Navy.
they'll be called the Guardians.
I like I like Army Navy symmetry. I'll say
Yeah,
that.
yeah, there you
I
go.
think Navy being the mids, I think Army should be the cadets. But that's
But when it
my
comes to the football score, the symmetry should tilt a little in favor of Army.
well, we'll see. Everybody goes on their runs. Everybody has their decades of
Nice.
success.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those were excellent answers. You
Awesome.
win. Okay.
Well,
Hey,
thank you.
well done. Hey, you've been a pleasure to have. It's nice to have a teacher in a different venue on board here. It looks like you didn't just kind of casually say, "Hey, let's get together and learn something." You got a job. You worked with a particular curriculum, and it sounds like you really helped people advance themselves in education. Which, Matt, it's always the goal of education, isn't
Always.
it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I think the education and training aspect is a really integral part to one's job as a leader when you're in the military, especially when you're an officer or a non-commissioned officer, that you really do take kind of you need to take that responsibility seriously. Not that everyone necessarily needs to get hired as an adjunct faculty member and teach some courses, but when it comes to making sure your soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, or guardians, have training on their calendars, making sure that's worthwhile and it's something that will be good for them for their career. So,
and knowing what adjunct people get paid, we'll say thank you for your volunteering to do the job and your
Yes.
volunteer work doing it. Okay. Hey, listen, it's
Absolutely.
been great having you on. Matt, you want to help? You want to send us
Yeah,
out?
yeah. Just this has been another episode of Brick and Mortar. Please tune in another 2 weeks, and hopefully we'll have an episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us, Nick. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks for
Bye,
having me.
everyone.